I'll see you at the gym.
Looks like low tide.
It's really meals like this that really make your bulking journey a success, because this is something that I struggled with for a long time. So the first meal that I always have for bulking is 5 eggs, 1 whole avocado, and then 2 slices of sourdough bread. Now I haven't actually had the chance to buy groceries for this week, so I actually have no bread today, but I do have the eggs and I do have the avocado, so I'm going to have to make up those calories with something else. So I think I'll probably have a banana or something, but let's get straight into it. So this meal here is quite fat heavy, not too protein dense, but it has obviously a lot of protein in it because there's 5 eggs. What I do is, especially because this one doesn't have any bread, I put lots of salt on it and I put lots of garlic granules on it after I've cooked it. So instead of cooking it with garlic granules, I put garlic granules on after. I find it just has more of an intense flavour this way. So this is going to be around, I think, 600 calories, probably 500, something like that. Usually this breakfast is 1,000, usually this breakfast is about 980 calories, which is a very, very healthy breakfast for a bulking journey. That's when it has the 2 slices of bread. Now what we're actually missing out on as well, because this is only eggs and avocado, is that we're actually also missing out the butter that I put on the bread, and that's about probably 80 to 100 calories, even just that, because that's super calorie dense. So we've got the eggs, the avocados, but we are missing the bread and the butter. Let's get into it, yeah? I'll see you at the gym. And there's 2 things that I want to tell you about grocery shopping and when you're bulking and what you should eat and whatnot. Basically, at least for me, I always have at least like 1 cheat meal, I suppose you could say. And my cheat meal always comes after I've done my groceries. Why does it always come after I do my groceries? Because I'm just bloody knackered. I have to walk like all the way back from Waitrose back to home with 2 bags on my back, and I think to myself, the last thing that I want to do is cook a meal for myself at the minute. I just don't want to do that. And I actually know, because I know myself enough and I've been on this journey for long enough, that if I don't want to do something, and if I really don't want to do something, there's only a certain amount of times that I can force myself to do it. And so I always make the conscious decision to make sure that I have something that I can eat instantly as soon as I get home once I've came back from my groceries. So today it's actually some breaded chicken thighs and some chicken drumsticks that were reduced for today. This is another thing that I always do, is on the day that I do the groceries, try and get something that's reduced for you to have instantly on that day, because a lot of the time, you know, I'll eat something that's past its best before day, but I won't buy something that's past its best before day unless it's reduced to a significant amount. So that's what I've actually got to eat today for my lunch, and then I'll be having a smoothie, and then after that I'll be having my dinner. Altogether it should be something around 3,400 calories. The second thing I want to tell you about my grocery trip is exactly what I get. Now I get a lot of stuff, but just off the top of my head I get about 10 bananas, some kiwis, some strawberries, some blueberries, and 2 organic strips of salmon, as well as 2 steaks, but I don't get them from Waitrose, I get them from Aldi. Beef mince, some pasta sauce, shallots, garlic, maybe some other seasonal things like leeks and whatnot. And then in terms of meat, like for example, I always have chicken thighs with like some chicken breast, as well as sausages sometimes, but like steaks a go-to. As I said, beef mince is a go-to. These are things that are high in fat but also high in protein, that makes them altogether high in calories, which is exactly what you need for a bulking journey. But you do also have to make sure that you are getting in your fruits and your vegetables and all the vitamins and minerals that you need, because you do need to support your body, and you do need to make sure it's healthy in order to put on muscle. It's not just a matter of getting enough protein in. That will help you, but in the long term you do need to make sure that you are staying healthy and you are actually eating the things that are good for you. In addition to what I've already mentioned, I always get 2 or 3 cartons of 12 packs of eggs, because I have 5 eggs in the morning, as well as getting 7 avocados, and then trying my best to find a nice loaf of bread. Sometimes I get it from work, sometimes I don't. They've stopped kind of doing that recently for staff, which sucks. So I've started just trying to buy sourdough bread from Waitrose, which is kind of a learning curve because you don't really know which ones are good and which ones aren't. But to be honest, that is probably one of the most important meals of my day, is at breakfast. It's 1,000 calories, high in protein, high in fat. It just starts out the day perfect.
Because you do nothing at all feel so free. That's what I want to talk to you about. Just bring this on.
Put it on, man. Okay, here I got my shake. So all that I use in my shake is literally just 2 tablespoons of protein powder, I think it's 1 teaspoon of just creatine powder, and then a tablespoon of peanut butter with 2 bananas and milk that just takes it up to the line. Don't actually know exactly how much milk that I use, but enough. This altogether ends up being something like 40 to 50 grams of protein, obviously with the creatine as well, and it ends up being around, I think, 700 to almost 800 calories. So it's a really healthy shake for bulking up. It's one that is like, it's one of those ones that I really think is really vital for bulking, because without those 600 to 700 calories, I probably won't be in a caloric surplus with just lunch, dinner and breakfast. So having this is basically what creates my normal diet into a bulking diet. There's a number of different smoothies that people recommend for bulking and for a bit different protein shakes. A lot of them include like frozen berries and oats and whatnot. The truth is I've tried all of them myself, and whilst I do believe they do work for many people, for me it's just something that I didn't really enjoy. This one here I enjoy very much, and therefore I'm going to make it more than something that I'm forcing myself to make. So let me tell you something while this is cooking. The thing with my bulking journey, and one of the things that I've changed really, and maybe this is a bad thing, but this is something that's worked for me, is when I buy like a full packet of chicken thighs, for example, let's say there's 4 or there's 5, like I always eat all 5, right? And I did the exact same thing with the like fried chicken, like thighs and drumsticks that I had earlier on today for my lunch. And well, I wasn't expecting this. When I looked at the calories, that's like 1,500 calories. That's a lot. I don't usually go for such calorie dense meals if it's not protein dense as well or unprocessed. So that was a super cheap meal for me. I think with this meal, it is an important thing to remind yourself, because this is something that I struggled with for a long time. And this is that if I were to make a meal, I always thought it had to come from a recipe book. I always thought that it had to be perfect, that it always had to, you know, if I'm making a steak, it has to have the rosemary and the garlic in it. And, you know, if I'm making mushrooms and onion, like I should probably put some like brandy and some chicken stock in it and then make some kind of sauce. But in my case, at least in my personal experience, I always found that doing these things actually made me less likely to actually have that food. Now, you might be different, don't get me wrong, you might be different, but for those people who are out there who find themselves wanting to bulk, find themselves wanting to eat more food, find themselves wanting to put on more muscle, but for whatever reason you keep on skipping meals and you keep on thinking that because you didn't do the meal correctly you shouldn't make it again. To those people, try and just make the most basic meal that you could possibly make. Try and just perfect cooking one ingredient. Try and perfect the sear on a steak. Try and just get better at making rice. What to put in rice? Do you want to put anything in it? You don't have to. That's the kind of mindset you have to go for. You don't have to do anything, but ultimately, if we're eating towards a goal, you do. Obviously you have to enjoy the food you're making, I'm not saying that at all, but there is a level of snobbery that I had towards the beginning of my journey that completely killed my gains for the first year or so of my lifting journey, and that's not something that I want you to fall for. With this meal in particular, I think this is going to be somewhere around 800 calories, 1,000 calories, maybe a little bit more than that. This should take me well over my surplus, I think at least by 500 calories, 400 calories. To be honest, this is something that I would actually like to have a little bit more of. I'd like to have a little bit more steak, obviously not now, but just in general in my diet. And it's really meals like this that really make your bulking journey a success, because this is a fatty cut of beef, which is sirloin. The rice adds some needed calories on there as well, with some healthy vegetables in there, because you have to make sure they're there not only because they're highly enjoyable, and if they're not enjoyable and if you don't actually like vegetables, then you need to seriously grow up. But because they're good for bulking as well. Obviously they don't provide the calories that the steak will or the rice will, but they do still contribute towards your muscle growth by making sure that you are healthy. So let's dig in and see what it's like. I've never actually eaten these mushrooms before. In the shiitake, they were unreduced, so I thought I'd give them a try. Quite a strong kind of beefy umami flavour.